topic for today is the Texas prison system. And I have with me today Neil Guiese. Neil has 2 associate's degrees in liberal arts and applied sciences from Trinity Valley Community College. He also has a bachelor's degree in behavioral science and is just a few hours away from his master's in humanities at the University of Houston Clear Lake. Neil spent 20 years as an inmate in the Texas prison system. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Hank.
I also have with me today Johnny Ward. Johnny has a bachelor's degree in behavioral science and a master's in literature, also from the University of Houston Clear Lake. Johnny spent 17 years as an inmate in the Texas prison system. Johnny is also the author of the book Gridlock, an anthology of prison narratives, From Prison to Purpose. Good morning, Johnny.
Morning.
So first, I bought the book. Man, it's compelling. So to be honest with you, I didn't make it all the way through to the end. It's a big book. I'm a busy guy, but I did what I could, and I'm impressed with several things. First, it's well written. It's put together neat. I like the way it's put together. But it gave me a real sense of how dark the prison system is and how broken our crime and punishment system is. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the book. And Neil, I know you wrote a section of it, and I was just, every story in that book, it really takes you back. So, go ahead and tell me a little bit about your experience in your writing and how it ended up in the book.
Well, fortunately for me, I chose education while I was in prison, right? But you got to consider that for every person that's in class, there's 50 people that are waiting to be in class. So TDC just really doesn't have the resources that they need. But I was one of the fortunate few that found myself in the classroom away from all the violence and chaos. And so actually that little section that I wrote, I actually did that for college. We took a microbiography class, and I was trying to think, I spent over half my life in prison, and that's really all I know. I grew up in prison. As messed up as that may sound, and it's kind of hard to, maintain your humanity in some of those situations which that are covered in the book. But the main thing that, the story covers is just, the change in my attitude towards prison. Because I was once, like anybody else, free citizen, a teenager driving down the road, and I remember driving down 45, and you can see the holiday unit, right? And so I'm driving, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, there's a prison right there. And so my idea was like, I'm just thinking of all these prison movies, like, where you've got to shank somebody or get shanked, or getting raped, and I'm just thinking of, and when I look, I automatically think, I'm like, look at all those murderers and rapists. That was my first thought, and then I was like, you know what, I don't think that fence is high enough. And I actually, felt a fear, and I wanted to get out of there. And that was my perspective before going into prison. 20 years later, when I'm on 45 and I drive down it, I'm thinking to myself, man, look at all those guys that screwed up. They made mistakes. They were either taught wrong or they just made poor decisions, drug and alcohol abuse. And then I'm thinking, man, it's 103 degrees right now in Texas. It sure would be nice if they let them wear shorts. My thoughts have completely changed because I could not see them as human beings based on America's cultural ideologies. It prevented me from seeing a human being as a human being. And my story in there just kind of, it was a transformative process that took many years, but at the end of the day, it's all about people. Offenders are still people.
Right.
And in society, whether we like them or not, they're going to be put back into society, and we need to make a place for them and make them feel a part of that society.
I agree. Johnny, talk to me about how you ended up with the book. Who gave birth to the idea of writing the book, and how did it come about? Because honestly, being an author is a tough deal. I mean, it takes a while to write a book. I'm sure it takes a while to find a publisher and do all the things you need to do. So, man, it's an accomplishment. And you've been out how long?
11 months.
It's crazy. I want to hear how you did it.
So what happened is initially when I got out, I was placed on GPS monitor, and so I was limited on what I could do. I couldn't see my family. You know, I couldn't go out and spend time, you know, with my kids on the weekend. I was really limited, and through that frustration, I started a page from Prison of Purpose, and on this page, I would share the various issues that I was going through. And not only that, I had a lot of friends and a lot of classmates that would write me. And I said, maybe, you know what, this is an opportunity to not only share my story, but share their story. And so during the process of posting their stories and posting what I was going through, I mean, my following, it just grew. You know, in a couple of months, I already had, you know, 3,000 followers, and it had reached like 25,000 people. And I was blown away. And so at some point I said, you know what? I have all these stories, I have all these writings, I have all these classmates. These guys are graduate students, and some of them are working on their bachelor's degrees. These guys are stronger writers than me. And I said, you know what? I need to give these guys a voice. And so I started putting this book together. And so the first chapter was criminals, felons, prisoners, who are we? And I thought that it would be a good opportunity for everybody to show their personal narrative, what they were going through, to kind of give the audience an idea of who prisoners are. Because there is all these stigmas and biases and labels that are associated with criminals, right? But the reality is, you know, like Neil here, he committed an offense 20 years ago when he was a kid. You know, I committed offenses, you know, a decade ago or 15 years ago or whatever the case may be, or some of the guys in this book 20 years ago and 30 years ago. So they commit these offenses, and, you know, but the reality is I'm not the same guy I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But society says, you know what, you committed that offense X amount of years ago, but you're still that same man today. And it's unfair. It's unfair to be in a society where this society says it's all about second chances and it's all about opportunities. But for somebody that's incarcerated to get out, they've already been labeled, right? It's hard to get housing. It's hard to get employment. It's you know, opportunities. We say that we want these guys to be successful. Yet the justice system and the parole system, from an academic perspective, is designed to prohibit these guys from progressing in their life. So my point in doing that was to say, you know what, we're fellow Americans and we're citizens, and these are the guys that are in prison. And then the second chapter was on education, because for me, being from a lower socioeconomic area, me growing up in an environment where there was a lot of drug use and a lot of violence, for me, I could, you know, education, it wasn't a priority. And so I entered the prison system with the 7th grade education. And, you know, I went on to get my GED and then my associate degree and then my bachelor's degree and then my master's degree. And that did so much for my confidence and my aspirations. So I thought it was a good idea to not only share what education did for me, but what it did for my friends. You know, like me and Neil, we were friends for, you know, close to a decade. So, I mean, I know this man's character. I lived with this man. I've eaten with this man. I went to school with him. I worked out with him. I know who this individual is. And I know how education has impacted him and has impacted all my friends. But the reality is that opportunity, like Neil said, there was 50 people ahead of him, or behind him, trying to get in. When I graduated with my master's degree, there was 4 of us. So that's 4 people that were offered this program in the whole nation, not just in Texas,
Wow.
in the United States.
Really?
They offer bachelor degree programs, undergraduate programs throughout the nation, but this is one of the only master's degree programs in the nation. And so when I graduated and there was 4 of us, I mean, you can just imagine what my aspirations turned into, I said, you know what, yeah, I'm a felon, but I'm also a graduate student, right? Next is my PhD. And as much as this system is designed to dehumanize me and think that and allow me to feel like I'm less than, the reality is education showing me, hey, you're capable of doing whatever you set your mind to do. So I thought that that was important to talk about education. And then the third chapter was on perspectives. I wanted to give my friends an opportunity to write about whatever they wanted to write about. Being race, or being dehumanization, or being religion. Because the thing about my friends and my fellow classmates is these guys they're intellectual powerhouses. You know, while the world has been sitting back and watching these movies about, you know, prison life and about Shanks and about everything that goes on, my friends for the last 10 and 20 years have been sitting down and they've been working on their athleticism and their writing skills and building each other up. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give my friends an opportunity to kind of to shine, to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. And so, and then I had all these people reaching out to me on my page, and they're like, what can I do for my incarcerated son to help him develop into the guys that you highlight on your page? Or what can I do to help, you know, my son or my daughter get out and be successful? And so in the last chapter, I talked about, you know, not only some of the things that I did, but resources and just giving these people a little direction. And so, you know, during the process of, you know, putting this together, and my professor, Dr. Subramanian, and my old writing professor, Craig White, they helped. I shot them my manuscript. And just like in class, when they would chalk up our papers, and they would say, you need to do, and maybe you can do this here, or maybe you can do this, that. They did the same thing with the book. So it wasn't just me. I still had my professors in my university behind me, you know, and that was the thing for me is there's a disconnect. You have our university, the University of Houston Clear Lake, and we have some awesome professors. We have an awesome president, Ira Blake. We have, you know, just these awesome people, but TDC doesn't want our university to be overly involved with their students. They want there to be a separation, right? They're your students, but at the end of the day, you know, if you have any interaction with them, then it may mess up the whole program. Well, for me to get out of prison and no longer have those restraints and to approach the president and approach my professors, they were waiting for that opportunity so they could, you know, do everything that they could do to see, you know, one of their students flourish. And so with that being said, with them behind me and with my fellow classmates behind me, that's how this developed. You know, I just built the framework and put it together.
So you mentioned that there was a certain number of individuals that were eligible in the country and not just the state. And so what's the criteria? I mean, what does it take for an inmate to be able to get involved in this educational program and do what you did?
Can we give this to...
Absolutely. Neil, I'd like to hear.
Okay, well, like Johnny, when I was incarcerated, I didn't have a GED. And so when you go through intake, they evaluate your education level and whether you need to go to developmental classes or if you're ready to take your GED classes. So my personal experience was I was ready for the GED, and I took it and I passed it. And afterwards, I took the college entry exam. I passed it, and then you have different grants. You have the Youthful Offender Grant that TDC provides for offenders that are 25 years or younger, and you also have I went blank.
The TPEG, maybe?
TPEG and FAFSA. Yeah, you have grants, and so I was fortunate. I racked up a $6,000 bill for my education that I got to pay back to the state. But I was also fortunate to have a full scholarship, and that's what enabled me to work on my master's degree. Otherwise, I'd have been stuck.
Right.
But as far as getting in there, there's a lot of obstacles. And when I say that, first of all, you know, the whole culture at TDC is You know, why are you doing that? It's going to be for nothing. You're not going to be able to use it. They're not going to hire you out there, you know. And so, but for me, I just made a personal decision that, you know, if I had to do 20 years, I was at least going to have a bachelor's degree before I got out. And as Johnny said earlier, as far as I know, the University of Houston Clear Lake offers the only master's degree program in the nation. And that's only on the Ramsey unit. And when we walked the stage together, when we got our bachelor's degree, there was what, 24 of us? 24 men on a 1,200 man unit.
Out of a system of 158,000.
Wow. And so we are like very, very fortunate and lucky to have that opportunity. And I think more men need to have that opportunity because, you know, I use this example all the time. TDC is always, you know, they're all about vocational programs, electrical, plumbing.
Right.
And while those will give you job skills, it doesn't make you a better human being. You know, but if you get somebody a liberal arts degree where they can think about things, they can take a topic and they can study it and they can run it through the mill, then they're thinking. They're not being told what to think.
Right.
Okay, so the example that I always use is if you take a wife beater and he gets locked up and he takes a vocational trade, let's say bricklaying, you're only going to have a wife beating bricklayer. You're not. There's no reform in that.
Right.
Whatsoever.
That makes sense.
You know. So for me, education is the best deterrent for criminal thinking, criminal behavior, because what it allowed me to do, it enabled me to see people for who they are. You know, and just to, I want to share my global perspective, right quick, right. We live in a nation of laws, right? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's what we're taught in school.
Right.
Well, it's actually life, liberty, and property. Every single law in the land are based upon one of those three ideals, right? Even a stop sign. What does a stop sign do? It prevents you from running over somebody else and taking their life and vice versa.
Right.
And so every crime is a theft, essentially. Whether it's somebody's property, their life, or their freedom. Okay, so somebody commits a crime and then they go to prison. So what happens? Their life is taken. You're taken out of the gene pool, first of all. In Texas, there are no conjugal visits. So not only are you punishing the offender, but you're punishing the family as well. And then their liberty's taken away, which is cool. I mean, they deserve to be punished, right? So, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about slavery still exists in America, you know, they didn't teach us that in school.
Right.
I was a slave, Hank, for over half my life. And I didn't even realize it until I started going to school and I started reading for myself and searching for this information. And I would see guys around me every day and they were suffering. And they were bitter and they were angry, and they didn't know what to do with it. So instead of what they do, they either take their aggressions out on other offenders or the officers. And so TDC creates this artificial environment that has nothing to do with being a productive member of society. And they throw around this word called rehabilitation, right? Well, here's the thing. If I was habilitated in the first place, I would need to be rehabilitated.
That's right.
Correct.
So they're using these terms, and they're not even using them properly. I was never habilitated properly. So when I go into this environment, nobody ever talked to me about my crime. In 20 years, Hank, nobody assessed me and said, okay, I have a murder charge, right? I have a first-degree murder charge. I was 16 years old, under the influence of acid, and I thought it would be a good idea to go rob a store. As insane as that may sound, that's the truth. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And unfortunately, the robbery went horribly wrong and a man lost his life. Did I go in there, you know, was I laughing and smiling and mowing somebody down? No, I didn't have a drug problem, I had a money problem. In my mind, somehow, in that altered state of awareness, I needed some money, and I didn't care who I hurt to go to get it. And that goes back to not seeing that person as a human being and recognizing that they have the right to life, they have a right to liberty, and they have a right to property. I wasn't trying to help them. I was trying to hurt them. And so now that I committed that offense, I get put into a system that commits the very same crimes against me.
Right.
They don't care about me. They don't care about my living conditions. I live in a filthy cell where staff runs rampant. They don't give me any cleaning supplies. They don't care if I'm getting beat up every day, getting my teeth knocked out. They don't care. Go back and do your time. And so I said all that to say that that's the cycle of crime and victimization of society that we live in. We take offenders off the streets to protect society, but we treat them inhumanely, unjustly, and then we let them back out into society. Now, I know guys that have been locked up 20. When I got out, I got a $50 check. That's what you get, a $50 check. TDC doesn't pay you.
Wow.
They don't pay you any money, so therefore there's no incentives to work.
Mm-hmm.
So they habituate offenders to not work or to be lazy as possible because you're not going to get paid for your hard work and effort. When we live in a country of, dirty hands, clean money.
Right.
And so it's completely backwards to the ideas that our country holds dear, or they claim to hold dear. And the rhetoric is so messed up to where, like they say, you have second chances. Well, in Texas, there are no second chances. They say that, well, you got to go pay your debts to society. You never pay that debt. I don't get to vote. I have no say-so. Is that right? Is it just? Is it fair? Those are the questions that the policyholders aren't asking. And there's nobody who's trying to change the system, and I can't figure out why, because we have a 67% recidivism rate. So if you go to the doctor, Johnny, and he's got his record is he's got 67% success rate, are you going to continue to go to that doctor? No, he needs to quit practicing medicine is what he needs to do.
Right.
And so that's the thing about TDC is that they do not treat human beings as human beings. We get called offenders.
Yeah, that was used prior to 1997.
I think 96 or 97 they
96 or
changed it.
97, they changed it to offender.
Yeah.
And that's
The definition is
that's
something that offends like a smell. That's the Webster's definition. And so we live in you have to be very, very careful with labels. Like
Right.
Johnny said earlier, when you call somebody a criminal or a convict, then that's a certain role that they're going to adopt and they're going to play out. And so I always call myself a displaced citizen. When I actually looked at the term offender, I was like, that's not me. Yeah, I messed up, but I don't want to be that person. I didn't want to be the bad guy, Hank.
right.
You
No
know,
one does.
No, but then all of a sudden I found myself, I'm a bad guy, and it's hard to overcome that.
I'm sure
It's very difficult, and the reason why it's so important is because whether we like it or not, no matter if you're Republican or Democrat, no matter what your stance is on prison reform, the fact of the matter is that 95% of offenders that are incarcerated right now are going to be released. So let's run it through the mill. Let's say we lock them up for 20, 30 years flat. Okay, when we could have left, but they were eligible for parole after 10. Now, after 10 years, they came up for parole. Their family was still alive. They had people that loved them. They had people that supported them. They had people to give them job opportunities, a vehicle. They had everything that they needed. And time after time, TDC will set them off and set them off and set them off until their parents pass away, and they have nobody left.
Right.
And my question is, why? If you know you're going to let this individual out, why don't you have an individual plan for him. But they don't. Everybody just gets thrown into one melting pot, and at the end of the day, we're just shelved, and they're making money off of taxpayers.
And I
for
assume
storage.
there's no counselors or anything like that in prison, someone that's assigned to you to help you to reintegrate to society. I mean, I don't know, so I'm asking.
No. Well, that's bringing up a. Okay, we're talking about medical now, and so.
Well, let me back up just a little bit. It's something that you had said really struck nerve, and I thought it was important, so I don't want to pass it up. So you were talking about education and how it gave you the ability to think critically and objectively. So, does the culture in prison, just as a general rule, prevent that objective thinking and critical thinking? And did you have to separate yourself from that to continue in your education? I mean, it seems like it would have been seriously out of the norm, and it would have been almost really hard to exist in prison and study as hard as you have to study to get a bachelor's, to get a master's, things like that.
Johnny can contest that anybody that goes into a prison, the first thing that you're going to notice is that it's very, very loud. It's very, very loud. And it's very, very hot, especially in the summertime. As far as trying to get an education, yes, you're going against the grain on that, because like Johnny said earlier, if you were raised in a single parent household, right, that your parents didn't go to college, they don't have their GED, it's not education is not a priority.
Right.
But at the end of the day, everybody wants to make a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have money to survive. And so really what we have is it's a culture that it's a counterculture to America. It's not polite society. They have their own way of life. They have their own mores and laws and values that they live by. Well, it gets magnified in prison. We're talking about a hyper-masculine environment where it is the survival of the fittest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very hard to sit down and relax and read a book when you have to be hyper vigilant. What is that guy doing? Is he going to steal my property? Am I going to have to fight? Am I going to have to, it's very, very stressful. But then after you prove yourself, then you can start doing some time. But even then, it is so hard to sit down and write papers when you've got guys banging their locker lids because they got stuck out for chow.
Right.
And the officer won't open the door and let them go eat. So they're creating a ruckus, they're starting fires, all these crazy situations. Yeah, it makes it impossible to study. And then you have a lot of people that you shouldn't have got locked up. That's their attitude. When I'm trying to study, they're basically like,
You want to go to school now, right?
Yeah, you don't want to go to school in the world, And so change is very, the hardest thing to change, I think, is to change yourself, but like I said, I'm very, very fortunate that I just happened. It wasn't even a cognitive decision. I had no idea what education was going to do for me and open my eyes up and allow me to see the world through multiple lenses and disciplines, psychology, sociology, anthropology. It gives me the tools necessary I need to take any problem and come up with a resolution, and not just bow down to the status quo.
Right.
And that's what our society has done, is we're just bowed down. Well, this is the way it is. This is the way it's always been. Let's not question it. Let's not take cameras in behind prison walls. You can't get a senator or a state rep inside prisons to actually look at them. And when they do visit, it's during a graduation where the walls have been freshly painted and everything's been cleaned up.
Right.
But let me take you down to J-Pod on Cofield and show you that when you walk on the block, there's water running off a 3-road. Because guys are so unhappy and disgruntled because they're not even deemed a human being.
And you know what? Can I break into that?
Absolutely.
I want to talk. I think a lot of people, they don't understand what it's like to be in prison. The best way that I could tell that is through my own experiences. And so when I was 21 years old, you know, I was living on the street, and I was homeless. I was staying where I could, and I ended up getting shot by a police officer. So I get sent to the county jail and put on pain medication because, you know, I have this 4 holes in me. I have one in my chest and one in my hip. And I'm just a kid, right? No education, living on the streets. I don't know anything about the criminal justice system. So like any uneducated kid, I signed for 12 years. You know, once it's time for me to go to prison, you know, they strip me all the way out. They give me a jumper. They handcuff me to another guy. And then they send me to the Guiese unit. And then they put me in this big dog kennel. Because that's basically what it is, a big dog kennel. And they say, you know what? We need to send you to the Jester unit because you're on painkillers, and we don't have painkillers in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So I'm taken out of this kennel, and I'm shot hours away to the Jester 4 unit, which is like a psych unit, and they have AC there. This is one of the few units that have AC. So they strip me butt naked, and they lock me in a cell with a tear-proof blanket, and they give me a roll of toilet paper. And they keep the temperature real low. So the temperature's kept real low because the colder you are, the more you're going to stay huddled in a little ball, and the less problems that you're going to be. Mind you, I haven't heard from my family. I've never been in a situation like this before. I'm 21 years old. You know, I haven't even worked through all the madness of everything that I went through, you know, growing up in a dysfunctional home and being, you know, homeless and everything that comes with that.
I was a wreck at 21, I know.
Yeah, so I don't even, you know, I haven't even dealt with that, and now I'm dealing with all these other issues. And so I stay there for a week, and I'm shivering, and I'm using this roll of toilet paper as a pillow, and every day they come and check on me, and are you going to hurt yourself? Are you going to hurt anybody else? No. After a week, my answers suffice. They put me back on the bus. I'm taken back to the Guiese unit. I'm stripped out again, and now I'm introduced to prison. So that was my early introduction. This is my formal introduction. So now I'm, you know, told about gangs, and I'm told about race relations, and who I can eat with, and where I can sit. And that's just on the social level. Now the environmental level, you know, we're in this big, you know, tin buildings, and it's, you know, it gets, in Texas, it gets up to 100 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you have, you know, 60 or 80 bodies in a dorm, in a tin building, and the floors are concrete, and it's hot, and their body heat is hot, and the whole environment, and then you have the races, and you have the gangs, it's a real, it can be a real violent and a real dangerous situation. So this is my introduction into prison life. And then it's getting sent to, like, I went to Cofield. Now you're getting sent to even a larger prison system where there's individual cells. You know, guys that have been down there for 20 and 30 years. I mean, there's some monsters, dudes that are just huge that are walking around TDC. Dudes that are never getting out of prison. So I'm this, you know, 20-year-old kid, and I'm in this environment. And the thing, when you get locked in the cell with somebody, I mean, anything can happen.
Right.
You know, they may check on the wing, and they may not. They may hear some screaming. They may go see what's going on, or they may not. You know, and that's just the environment. It's a type of environment where, I mean, some of these units are 100 years old, so the walls have mold and sweat all over them when it gets hot.
Lead paint.
Yeah, the windows are busted out, so during the winter time, you know, you're in your cell and you may be trying to bird bath from wreck because you don't have any hot water in your cell and you're shivering. You know, it gets so hot during the summer you might douse the concrete floor in water and lay there in your boxers just to try to get cool. You know, your toilet may run. You know, it's a type of environment where somebody can get killed and they'll pick up the individual in the body and they'll lifeline them and they'll just keep running wreck. I mean, they'll keep running chow. It's a system that it's where things like that have been going on. And then you have all this nepotism because everybody's related. you have, you know, the captain related to the lieutenant, or the warden, you know, related to the major, or there's all these, you know, people that have been in the system, and fathers and grandfathers and sons. So there's all this nepotism. So justice is relative. So it's regardless if you're right or wrong, they're going to side with their people. So you don't have a dog in the fight. You know, you're an inmate. You're a liar, and you're a thief, and you're where you need to be. So even in you trying to do the right thing, you know, you can't win. And you know, with that being said, like, a lot of people don't understand, and it's a desensitizing environment. So you get these young people in there, and they're living with violence. You know, you're sitting in a day room, and you're locked in a day room, and people right next to you are getting, you know, beat up, or you find yourself in situations where you're having to defend yourself. And it gets to a point where the fear is gone. You get stripped naked so many times that any insecurities that you have, you become numb to them. That, you know, you start seeing, you know, bodies and people as objects, and you're just living in this numb type of environment day after day. And then on top of that, you know, you have any hopes and aspirations that you may have on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you're just living with all this doubt and all this uncertainty. And the environment, it doesn't make you feel any. You feel at some point, you're like, I can't understand why I'm being treated like this. I can't understand why I made some bad, you know, decision 10 years ago in a moment of anger, and every day I'm having to feel like this, and every day I'm having to go through this. You know,
So I find it interesting because it appears, and I've never been in prison, so, you know, I really don't know, but it appears that from the minute you are convicted, you're set up for failure. Now the question that I have is, does it remain that way up until the time that you're let out? Or is there a transitional period at the end before you get parole, or before you have done all your time, or whatever? I mean, are you just set up for failure till the day that the gates open and you're outside and the sun hits you in the face? Because if you are, we have a real bad problem with Texas prisons then.
but I want you to think about it this way. The people that are in the parole system, right? The people that are involved in the criminal justice system, I mean, ultimately, where does their income come from? Right? Where does their paycheck come from? So at the end of the day, does it matter to them? I mean, in all hopes, if I want to keep getting paid, I need these guys to keep coming in. You know, I mean, to a degree, it's like, you know, ethically, I mean, or morally, I should feel like, hey, I don't want to see you guys again.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, you know, if I run a tire shop and I replace somebody's tire, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's bad for me to not want them to get a flat, but that's how I pay my bills.
But I kind of wanted to get a flat.
You know what I mean? And that's
Sure.
And that's what it's an economic system. You know, the whole system, like if you, and Neil can talk about this, but it's made up of free labor, like all these industries that they have within the prison system.
Right.
One example of that is inmates are still out there in the fields. We were out there in the fields picking cotton, picking vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're still out there with Aggies, and there's still men on horsebacks with 30-30s and shotguns, right? The reality is so inmates are out there picking cotton, and then they have an industry that inmates are out there taking this cotton and making it into material, and then they have another part of this industry where inmates are taking this material and making T-shirts, and then these T-shirts are being sold to who?
To us.
Back to the inmates.
Back to the end.
So the inmates are
Wow.
in there running commissary, right?
Uh-huh.
And then the inmates are using their family's money to buy these T-shirts. So they just picked it. They just developed these T-shirts, and now they're selling it back to themselves.
For $7 for one T-shirt.
And that whole process, inmates aren't getting paid anything at all. Actually,
Right.
they're putting money in. So they're not only putting money in, but they're getting, what is it, like 40 grand a year per inmate,
It's over 35.
right? Per
Yeah,
year.
I actually did some research and I found out that let's see, where is it here? Texas Correctional Industries were valued at over $88 million, and this was back in 2014. So
Okay.
I know it's grown since then.
Let's
Back to the history of TDC, right?
Okay.
So after the Civil War, the Southern economy was devastated. Okay, and then even after slavery was abolished in Texas, nobody told the slaves that they were free for 2 more years.
Right.
They had the information, they just didn't say anything, because you're talking about over 2 million laborers,
Right.
and they didn't want to give it up.
Yeah, and the repercussions weren't there because the news traveled slow back then.
Yep.
It was on horseback still, so.
And so this is the deviousness of the inception of the criminal justice system. Okay, they had to come up with a way to get that free labor. So what did? They started building prisons. They started going around. A black man's walking down the road. Let's lock him up. Once they were locked up, they would rent them out. They would make money. Imperial Sugar,
Mm-hmm.
multi-billion-dollar
Right.
operation, was raised up from the cane fields of slave labor.
Right.
That cemetery that they found in Sugarland a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
they would work you to death. And Johnny can attest about, we would come in with blisters all over our hands from being out there in the fields. Because they just create this, get them head high, and they would make us like pit against ourselves, and we don't know any better. So we're out there tearing our hands up, tearing our backs up, and people are falling out and dying out there in the fields, when that should never have ever been a possibility
Right.
in today's age. And so let's fast forward it. So you've got prisons, majority have black offenders in it for 50, 60 years, right?
Right.
And then even now, the population is like 60% black, 40% white, Hispanic, and like 20% white, okay? And so they created this system to where, once again, it's this free labor force, right? Free labor, free labor, free labor. And it got to be so big in the 70s and 80s and 90s with the war on drugs and mass incarceration.
Right.
And you've got to remember that, let's look at the word penitentiary. To be penitent, right? To repent. So it was founded upon, basically, you're a law violator, you are a sinner. So you need to be removed from society, put into a cell, given a Bible, and hard work and labor, and let you have time to reflect, and that'll change you. Well, if you look at the statistics on these huge prison sentences that people are being given, the maximum minimums, it is not a deterrent for crime whatsoever. It just isn't. But they created this system. They just gets as many people into the system and then works them and profits off of them as possible. That now it's indiscriminate. It doesn't matter what color you are. But at the same time, it also seems to target the lower socioeconomic segments of society.
Right.
You're not going to find any pawn shops, in the good part of town. They're all in the low. Well, what do pawn shops do? Most of them, it's stolen property, a lot of times. So that means I can go steal something, and I got a place right there to go get some money.
Right.
So
yeah, legal fence.
right, and
Yeah.
so you allow this. I mean, how do you prevent that? I mean, do you have a label and a tag on every single piece of property to where it transfers ownership, in a legal way?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be, but
That's basically what the 13th Amendment did.
But
Because there's a clause in the 13th Amendment that all men are, created equal and they're given this freedom,
Right.
except for criminals, with the exception of criminals. And so that was their loophole.
Yeah, I've actually got that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. So, I'd hate to think that our forefathers were conscious of what they were doing when they wrote this, but they had to have been. They had to have been. I mean, there's not a whole lot of legal nomenclature here, so it's pretty straightforward.
Well,
I mean, I think most people can understand exactly what that clause says.
Well, they wrote that when it was an institution that was approved of. Most people,
Yeah, it was normal.
It was normal. It was normalized. So, when they wrote that, it was of the times. But it's all it's called moral relativity.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it was okay then doesn't mean it's okay now.
Right.
Because if you really stop and critically think about it, it is wrong to make anybody a slave, no matter what they've
It's an
done.
archaic view of crime and punishment.
Just like
It really is.
the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. I mean, where does that get you? Violence begets violence. It doesn't stop.
Right.
But so basically slavery still exists, and when you look at all the states, right, you have some some inmates get paid and some don't, right? It might be 5 or 6 cents,
Mm-hmm.
an hour. They might make $5 or $6 a month, okay? And then you have medical. TDC spent $750 million in 2019 fiscal year with UTMB to provide physicians' visits, medications, dental for the population in Texas.
Okay.
$750 million. When we have a big influx of older inmates in TDC now because they've been held for so long, they're getting older, and so they have more health issues. Well, let's go back to the copay. When you look at other states, some states don't even have a medical copay because they realize that their inmates are wards of the state. It is their responsibility to provide their medical, their education, humane living conditions. Well, let's look at Texas. The most expensive medical copay that I found was in Nevada was $8.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go see a doctor, it's going to cost $8. If you want to go get your teeth cleaned, it's going to cost $8. In Texas, it's $100. And the legislatures want to make it $200. But we don't get paid. So who's paying that bill for our medical? It's our families that are putting money on our books and providing. They already provided for it once through taxes. And now they're getting hit again. And this is what happens is it's not, it's cost prohibitive for many offenders. Because when you don't get paid, to add a little bit to Johnny's picture of what it is to do crime, to be a criminal in this environment, this insane environment, to where some people have money and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of indigent offenders. They can't buy toothpaste. They can't buy coffee. They can't buy deodorant. And the state is supposed to provide these things, but more often than not, they don't.
And so I assume this creates an economy within the system.
It creates a black market that you would not believe.
Right.
And some people wash clothes for a living in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a respectable profession,
Mm-hmm.
but they won't wash boxers. They draw the line at washing boxers, But so what I'm trying to paint this picture is that even older offenders that would otherwise be eligible for Medicare, the state's not letting that happen. They want it all.
Wow.
Same thing with commissary. They make these contracts with all these different companies, and they buy, ramen noodle soups for probably 7 cents a piece, and they turn around and they sell it to us for 30 cents a piece.
Hey, can I cut in real?
Absolutely.
So as you hear all this information, I want to make this clear. I think a lot of the reason they don't provide these opportunities, especially when it comes to humanities, because humanities is all about, we talk about oppression, we talk about systems, right? We talk about this, what it is to be human, right? This connectedness, ethics, morality. It encompasses a lot. So it encourages free thinkers, right? That's what it promotes.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, is so when you hear this from Neil and you hear this from me, that's where we're speaking from. We're speaking through filtered higher education, right?
Right.
Growing in our own humanity, seeing humanity and the impact. With that being said, sometimes I feel like that's why I don't want to provide that opportunity, because the thing is what happens in this system if you get all these guys that have a voice now and they're speaking against this system. And I think that's partially is we have them under control. We have them doing what they need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
We have them having this inner conflict among themselves. And the more it's kind of like when you talk about Marxism, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. And so you have the bourgeoisie, and they're in control. They're putting out the information that they want to put out, right? Well, the thing is they keep the proletariat at odds with each other, because the more they're at odds with each other, that they'll never see their larger framework of the things that are going on. And so I say that because that's how I felt as an academic going through this system, right? That they're allowing so much confusion, so much mayhem, that they can keep doing what they're doing, and the people in power can stay in power.
Well, and the bottom line, I think, is that if you give these guys a voice and you make enough changes to where conditions are better, you're going to change the economic system of prison. And they don't want that. They definitely don't want that. Because if prison is a profit-making enterprise, they're not going to allow anything to disturb that.
And what is that? And so what does that say about America, or what does that say about U.S. citizens, or what does that say about the U.S. criminal justice system? And for me, the thing is like, we're living in a society where it's all about, being American and being a U.S. citizen, right? That's what it's about, right?
Absolutely. It's supposed to be.
Right? Well, we're citizens, right? There's a whole bunch of incarcerated citizens. And so I see this divide. There's this divide. So society says, hey, these guys are the guys causing the issues, lock them up, right? They're the ones caught. And so I'll give you that. We have made some poor choices in the past.
But 50% of offenders are nonviolent, but they're doing long sentences. Like their TDC's treating them as aggravated. They're making do over 50% of their time, with the sole purpose of keeping TDC full, keeping all the beds full, to create the most revenue as possible.
And you know what's...
I want to get back to that. So 53% are nonviolent offenders.
Nonviolent.
And how many of those would you think would be nonviolent drug offenses? I mean, if you could put out a number, and
30, probably majority. I would say the majority of that, because drugs and alcohol, that's a common thread that runs through prison.
right.
Majority of offenders were under the influence when they committed their crime.
And with that being said, poverty, we used to teach this influences class, and there's a whole chapter on there on substance abuse and a brain diagram and neurotransmission. And, I mean, it's just really well written. And so the reality is a lot of inmates were on some type of drug or alcohol when they committed their offense, right? As far as, having a bachelor degree in behavioral science, with substance abuse is considered disease.
Right.
And there's certain criteria that are associated with the disease. And I think it's clear biological basis, unique identifiable signs and symptoms, a predictable course of outcome, and the inability to control the cause of disease. So they use that criteria for all diseases. And because of that, substance abuse is considered as a disease.
It falls in that category.
It's in the DSM, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that being said, it is a mental condition, right? It is a mental ailment. It is a mental impairment. With so many people that are on drugs and alcohol, you would think that rehabilitation in the name of substance abuse would be treatment. It wouldn't just be confinement.
Right.
Right? But that's how they treat people with Also on that note, when you talk about mental health, when you talk about schizophrenia or people that have ADHD or people that have bipolar, well, the thing is early on they used to have a lot of psychiatric institutions, right?
Mhm.
You used to have mental hospitals. You used to have, you know, in the late 80s and the late 70s or throughout the 80s, there was this expansion of substance abuse treatment programs, right? Well, now they all started. There's not that many of them. So where are they all at? Where are these people with psychiatric impairments at? They're in Texas prisons.
Wow.
And then within these Texas prisons, they're all using outdated medication that they're no longer using anymore. And so, and I'm not stating this from some position of I don't know. I'm stating this as a position from a person that does know, and I've seen it hands on. You know that these people, I've been housed with people that have psychiatric impairments, and they're using Thorazine, and they're using outdated type of, and they're getting no treatment. And so ultimately, that's what's happening. You know what I mean? That's what's happening. So it's people with mental health, it's people with substance abuse problems. It's just there's this broad mixture of people with various issues, individual issues that need to be handled in an individual specific type way.
Right.
But they throw a blanket fix on everything. Right? See, they have parole, and then they have the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So what happens in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, we're just supposed to house you. That's all we're do. You give you 10 years or 20 years, that's our job. Rehabilitation that's not our concern.
Right.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, when you go in, they don't sit you down.
Say, hey, these are the things that you need. If you have 10 years to do, well, let's go ahead. This is going to be your treatment for these 10 years. These are the things that you need to be a productive member of society. That doesn't happen. You have the choice. You can either go to school or you can sit and watch Jerry Springer all day. And that's a big problem because most guys, we didn't go to school. We didn't think school was cool back in the day, right? And so wouldn't that be a great punishment to go to class?
And to learn.
And to learn.
You have to think. So, Bachelor of Behavioral Science, man, you're going sociology, you're going app psych, you're going deviance, you're going mental health, you're going criminology, you're going drug use and dependence, you're going brain and behavior. I mean, there's so many courses you have to take. You're learning about theory, you're learning about vocabulary. I mean, you're going through the DSM. I mean, you're actually understanding human behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like why we do what we do, positive and negative reinforcement, right? You're studying like all these approaches, right? Well, for the TDC guards, you only have to be 18 with the GED. So a lot of times, like, we would get a firm understanding of human behavior and where all these pressures, both internal and external, come from, right? And that yet the people that are in charge of us, the people that are in charge of this rehabilitation, they don't even have that amount of education.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but these are people that are in charge. These are people that are in control of your rehabilitation. Even for me to go to a substance abuse program, those guys were ill-equipped. They didn't have all the information that a lot of us guys have. They just didn't, because it wasn't a requirement for them to get that job.
Wow.
But the thing is if I buy low-value employees, I don't have to pay them much, right? And the system is so big, they can't afford to pay them much. You know, earlier you talked about counselors. Back in the 80s, they did have counselors for inmates. They had coaches, they had counselors, but then something happened. The expansion happened. And
Yeah, mass incarceration.
so who do we need to get rid of?
Drugs, right.
We need more beds. We don't need more counselors. You know what I mean? But
And also one point I wanna make, right, is when you look at each unit, you know, like a maximum security unit, you got your administrative segregation, right? There's only so many bed spaces in that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got your maximum security, right? Then you got your general population, and then you have your trustee camp, right?
Okay.
There's only so many beds. And then me and Johnny were on Ramsey unit when they were doing case quotas, right? Now, basically what that means is they would just make up a charge, write you a disciplinary case, and punish us.
Because they
It was in the Houston Chronicle, yes.
Wow.
So the rank on the unit, they would just say, "Hey guys, we're fixing to get audited. And since this is a prison, prisoners are supposed to mess up and break the rules. So let's go ahead and do the paperwork and make it look like it's supposed to in their mind. See, they're projecting an image in their mind onto the inmate population.
And I would imagine that stays on your permanent record and
Yes.
the parole board.
And it can affect your parole.
Wow.
It can stop you from going outside to recreation. It can stop you from having your phone privileges and talking to your loved ones, or even going out there and seeing a visitation. We're talking about a system that was based on the foundation of prison in Texas was based off punitive punishment. Punishment for the sake of punishment. Retributive
Right.
justice. So their ideology that we fight with every day we battled these guards, is that they felt like they needed to punish us when we had done nothing wrong. You know, and the reality is that, you know, if you know, an offense is 10 years old, or in my case 24 years old, they still felt it their duty to punish me. And it's their own idea of punishment.
Right.
Has nothing to do with policy or procedure. You know what I'm saying? So they made I haven't seen the stats lately, right? But when they finally allowed phones into Texas prisons, they were charging us 23 cents a minute for local calls, right? We're talking about over $5 for a 15-minute conversation with our loved ones.
Wow.
And who's paying that? I can't pay. I would love to work and make some money and use my money, my hard-earned money, to talk with my loved ones, but no, my family had to pay that money. And who's profiting off of it? TDC.
Right.
But technically they're not allowed to profit. So this is what they do, Hank. They put it into what they call a general revenue fund. They clean the money. And then they can do whatever they want to with it. And see, that's the problem that I have, right? Because when I was a young punk-ass kid, I didn't care about anybody but myself. You know, but as I matured and became educated, I realized that, you know, yeah, sure, I knew right from wrong, but did I have any idea of the consequences and the ramifications that my actions would have on my family, myself, and society as a whole? No, I did not. I didn't have the tools to work with at that time.
Right.
And so, like Johnny here, he's raising the awareness so that we can give inmates the proper tools that they need, and we need to welcome them with open arms and say, hey bro, it's okay. You made a mistake. But at the end of the day, you're still somebody's son, or daughter, or brother, or sister. And that's what's missing, is they don't, instead of humanizing offenders, they dehumanize them. And they put them in a category, and they're already down. Nobody feels good about screwing up and looking dumb.
Nobody wants to be the bad guy.
But they kick you when you're down, and they don't give you a hand up, you know, and get you on a solid footing and create a foundation that is restorative in nature, you know, through these rehabilitation programs, whether it be, you know, drug, psychiatric, you know, anger management. Anger's a big problem, you know, and one thing that we always tried to do was define what a man is. You know, our whole world is based upon words.
Right.
We think in words. Our understanding comes from words, and everybody has a limited supply of words that they know.
Right.
So when you take somebody off the streets that has, you know, a 7th grade education, their understanding is of a 7th grader. And if you don't teach them anything, and if you hold them 20 years, and when they get out, their understanding is still going to be that of a 7th grader. The only thing now is that they're going to be bigger and stronger and more prone. You know, it's basically like, I look at it like this. If you take a dog and you throw him into a cage with other dogs and you don't feed him, you don't pet him, what's going to happen when you let those dogs out?
They're going to be tough dogs.
But they're going to be dangerous dogs. They're going to be dangerous.
Right.
And so, you know, back to the recidivism rate. When you look at other countries, right, like Norway, they've got a 20% recidivism rate. But Americans, we talk crap about them because, oh, they're easy. they're weak. You know, they're light on their prisoners. It's like country clubs. It's not like country clubs. It's more like reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have a single cell. You have a kitchen with knives in it. That everybody, you cook your own meals. You don't go through a big crowded chow hall, you know, it's infested with flies, and wait in line for 30 minutes to get some trays, to get the spoon shaken at you because the guy behind the serving line is not getting paid and he don't give a crap about you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no incentives or no rewards to do good. There's only punishment in prisons. Even when we were trying to do good and trying to make our way to the classroom, you had guards with the keys and they wouldn't let us out. So we ended up being 30, 45 minutes late, you know, and that's my family's money.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, I think that we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but until we have cameras on the inside, because as far as I'm concerned, taxpayers pay for those, pay for prisons,
Mm-hmm.
and as taxpayers we have a right to see what goes on in there, because that's the only way that the consequences are going to happen. There can be no change without consequences. See, but the thing is, it's not punishment. There can be change without punishment, but there still has to be consequences. And the best learning system is rewards and natural consequences.
Right.
So basically, you have guys that are in prison that, but a lot of us, everybody that we hung out with, man, we wanted to go home. We did not want to die in prison. That's the worst fear you can have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that you basically threw your life away for nothing. And then you have people that they haven't reached that level yet. They haven't reached that understanding. They haven't self-analyzed their actions. They haven't understood how their brain works and where their behavior comes from. We lived in a society where, in prison, where a lot of guys were in prison for shooting somebody over property
Mm-hmm.
that didn't even belong to them.
Right.
They're on these street corners claiming that it's theirs, and they don't even know who owns that property.
Yeah.
That's the kind of ignorance that we're dealing with. These are the kind of individuals that are getting locked up off the street. Their values are totally skewed, that they don't understand that somebody else owns that property. They don't have permission to be on that property. They don't understand the laws, but yet ignorance is not an excuse. So this goes to our public education system that fails. Is failing our youth.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the prison pipeline, aftercare is failing offender populations, because the back to medical copays, right? When it costs money that you don't have, right, that you're going to have to pay upon release, a lot of offenders choose to not go and seek medical attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, TDC's justification for this super high exorbitant rate for this medical copay is that they want to weed out frivolous visits. Like, if you don't need to go, they're trying to weed it out. They're trying to set the bar so high that you have to be afraid that you're dying or passed out on the floor
Before you get medical attention.
before you'll go.
Wow.
And so what happens is these treatable conditions like heart disease, you've got HIV, you've got hepatitis C, you have all these conditions that are very, very expensive to treat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially when they're not treated early. So they're taking a problem and exacerbating it and making it a bigger problem. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but that's the good thing about, sitting here and talking. But one thing I want to say is that, okay, TCI made $88 million, right? What you need to understand is that the amount of waste that happens in TDC. When I was on Vito, I worked in maintenance for 7 years. Every single year, at the end of the fiscal year, let's say they had $70,000 left on their budget, right? The way policy is, if they don't spend that money, that's $70,000 less that they're going to get the following year.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would take the maintenance supervisors. They would all tell us, go take those tools off in that tool room rack, We're talking about brand new Craftsman tools,
Mm-hmm.
brand new $400 electrical meters, and we would destroy them. We would take a plasma torch and cut up brand new tools. Craftsman's got lifetime warranty,
Right.
You know that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're destroying all of this for what? That's what they're teaching us. And then back to vocationals.
Right.
When I took vocational class, you got once again you've got those two different kinds of inmates. You've got guys that get it and understand that this is not where they want to be in life in general. They want to provide for their families. And they'll read the books and they'll study and they'll learn. But then the other half are under the table sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachers allow them to do it. Windham is horrible when it comes to helping the offender population. They just they don't care. And if we went inside and audited their numbers, and you would see that how can everybody make 100 on a test, Hank?
Right. Yeah, that's impossible.
Yeah.
If I were there, there wouldn't be 100.
My last 6 months, I was on a private facility in Kyle, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Management Training Corporation, right? And they get $22,000 a head with TDC. For every offender that they take into the 6-month program, that's $22,000. If there's special needs, it goes up to close to $70,000, right? And so I had guys coming to me and they were like, we don't have any GED teachers. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we don't have any GED teachers. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, we don't have them. We just go down there, sit in a room, and we don't do anything. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. And so they asked me, so I found myself tutoring guys on the wing. You know, math is my niche. I'm really good at math. So I would help these guys out and show them how to study,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Because a lot of guys, they don't even know how to study. They don't even...
Right.
They just don't get it because they've never experienced it. And that's the thing that TDC doesn't provide. It doesn't provide the experience to show guys that, hey, if you got a problem, there's a number of solutions that we can go through, and then it'll be okay. You'll be better. It's called progress.
Right.
There's no goal orientation. And so I wrote some letters because I was mad. I was very, very angry behind that because MTC was claiming that they're providing these resources and they weren't. And so basically what you're doing is you're taking a guy, you gave him parole, you're not providing the necessary education that he needs to get a job, and then you're letting him back out on the street. And you're getting paid to do it.
Right.
I've got a problem with that. The parole board. You have 7 parole boards and members in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens when you come up for parole. You got 3 members on the panel, right? The first vote, second vote, third vote. If the first 2 vote yes, you're good. Third vote doesn't matter. If it's yes, first vote, no, second vote, third vote's a tiebreaker. 2 no's, of course, you're shot down. Now let's look at the numbers, Hank. You have over 60,000 offenders that are eligible for parole every single year.
Okay.
Okay? That's 60,000. We're talking about 3 members on this panel board. So if you divide 60,000 by 252 working days this year, you get 79.
Mm-hmm.
So that means those 3 panel board members have to review 79 cases a day.
A day.
A day. That's an 8-hour workday. So
That's
so
not
then
a
let's
possibility.
so then let's subtract the times that you have to talk on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
Google some stuff, use the restroom, eat lunch. So when it boils down to it, when you really do the math, it's like 3 minutes and some change to review somebody's life.
Wow.
You want me to tell you what helped me make parole? The fact that my wife, she paid $7,000 for a parole attorney.
Wow.
Right? So that got my wife a small interview with this parole officer. With this parole commissioner. Secondly, was my master's degree. Right?
Sure.
Because what else can you offer this man? What else do you need him to do? With that being said, is how many people have both those options?
Not many.
Not many.
You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So a lot of people, maybe they have been there for 20 or 30 years and their families passed away. Maybe they, they don't have the resources like that. I mean, not many people do.
And I just want to point out one quick thing, Johnny, is that
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to have actually a friend of mine had his sister be my parole attorney. And that I didn't have the money.
Wow.
But just based off who I am and our friendship, over the years, really blessed me. But you got to think about it. So if after those 79 individuals every day, think about when you pay for $7,000 for a parole attorney, and then they grant you a visit with the parole board, right? Those parole board members are in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That takes away from the time to look at other people's cases. And so what we have is you have attorneys that profit from prisoners from crime going in, and then they profit coming out.
Right.
And is that a fair and just system? Equality under the law? Not in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And so, but my point is this: is that you have people, just because they're poor doesn't mean that they don't. I mean, parole is a right in the state of. I mean, it's not a right, but a fair review is a right.
Mm-hmm.
To be given a fair and objective review hearing is a right in the state of Texas. And the parole board has been denying offenders this right for years, and they're lying. They got the wool pulled over society's face because it is humanly impossible to review that many cases.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we pay them to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
There's that accountability there, right?
Right.
Initially, if they get a file and they have no family, they have no attorney appointed, well, they can pretty much do what I want and they do what they want. There's no accountability. But when you have another professional sitting across the desk and they want answers,
mm-hmm.
and they're there to represent you, well, then that's when the accountability comes in.
So let me ask you this: you guys are out. So what's next for Neil Guiese? What's next for Johnny Ward? And what, there's so many complexities to the Texas prison system and the problems within the Texas prison system. Can't take them all on. So do you have any special projects that you wanted to do yourselves, or what's next? What are you guys going to do next? I mean, you're out.
Well,
You're out.
As for me, I'm under review for this GPS monitor this month, so I'm hoping that will alleviate some of the pressure and I'll be allowed to travel.
They need to take that thing off.
Yeah, and so I've been invited to meet Ted Cruz over the next few months and talk about Pell Grant options with another guy named Brandon Warren. Brandon Warren was in prison. Now he's gotten out and he's a professor for Lee College. He's a reentry specialist. I'm working on a second book called The Awakening. My University of Houston Clear Lake, just hired me as an adjunct professor. So I'll be teaching a humanities course titled Ideas and Transitions, Man-Made Prisons. And so not only will I be discussing prisons as a physical structure, but prisons based on like cultural and philosophical beliefs. Other than that, like I'm just as far as like working on this curriculum and building the syllabus and putting this book together. I'm just see what doors open up next.
Yeah. So are you used to being out? I mean, how's it feel? It's got to be different.
It's in reality, prison impacted me on a physical and emotional level, and I could see how it can impact other people. An example of that is hard for me to sit into a quiet room. In prison, when it gets quiet, that means something's bad's going to happen. And I only realized that getting out. And so just trying to readjust to, like some people are emotionally connected to the holidays and special events and all these things that, free Americans value.
Right.
For somebody that's been, incarcerated for X amount of years, there's a readjustment period.
Sure.
But ultimately, I see in the future is I want to argue policy. Parole policy, criminal justice policy. The thing about the tarnished area of my lives is I'll share them and I'm open about them and I accept responsibility, but So that's the starting point. The starting point is me accepting responsibility. But there's some injustices going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, what are we, as a nation going to do about these injustices? And so we'll just see where that takes me.
There you go. Neil?
Oh, what am I doing now? I've been out for 8 months. And I got to tell you that the transition has been a lot more difficult. Was not prepared for a lot of what I've been dealing with. And I mean, who could have prepared me except for ex-offenders? And you're not going to, as far as the system doesn't provide that, but every day is kind of, you got good days and bad days. I will say this, though, that the worst day in the world blows away the best day in prison any given day.
Oh, sure.
I'll tell you that hands down, but I'm busy trying to, just make money and survive.
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to have work even with, in the wake of the COVID, and, we got right out, I got out in February, and then COVID hit, and then so I get free, and then I get put on lockdown.
Right.
And so I had a real difficult time getting my driver's license because DPS was shut down. And now I'm starting my own business, Conroe Auto Glass, which is, I'm learning, I got a handicap, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living with a handicap because of the 20 years I did in prison, but at the same time, I'm highly educated to where I'm okay with that because I know where I'm at and I'm cool. So I know if there's something that I don't have, I'm going to have to do something I've never done to get it. That's the philosophy that I live by, but for a long time, trying to deal with what prison was and how people were treated, not just how offenders treated other offenders, and all the misplaced aggression,
Right.
And then you had people that are 18 years old and have never been put in a position of power. Power corrupts, and
Right.
the abuses of power run rampant in TDC. And so one day I just, the light bulb came on, and I wanted to make prison a better place than when I got there. So I became a peer educator, and peer education is a program, and Johnny was a peer educator as well, and it's peer-to-peer taught. So it's inmates teaching other inmates. It's a positive environment. There's not any officers, there.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we talk about, it stays in the room with us, right? And so when I would help guys, I learned that there's nothing better than trying to help somebody, because when you
Right.
try and help somebody, you cannot help helping yourself. In the big scheme of things.
Oh, yeah, it cleans your soul.
And so now that I'm out, I've been fortunate enough, to speak out about this, the carceral state that we live in. But at the end of the day, I got a big picture in my head. I'd love to take influences and put it into every public education school system. This could be taught to kindergartners, first graders.
Sure.
They should really donate a week to teaching humans to be humans. And I would love to say, that, love is going to fix all the problems in the world, but that's not realistic. But I do believe that empathy will. That when you realize that, when you critically think at the end of the day, that I didn't choose to be born white or short or gray hair, that wasn't a choice that I made.
Right.
I didn't choose to be born, lower middle class. I didn't, I was put in this environment, and I was a product of my environment. And then I went to prison, and I was like, no, hell no. It stops right here. I'm no longer going to be a product of my environment. I'm going to control the things that I can control. And so now that I'm out here and I have a voice, I want people to know that prisoners are treated so inhumanely on a day-to-day basis. They're not called by their name. their rights aren't recognized. Many offenders have lawsuits with TDC to simply force TDC to follow their own policies and procedures.
Right.
And to me, I mean, that's the justice system. And if you live in a system that's unjust, how can we call it the justice system? We need to change that name and call it something else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like I said, I'm really, really busy when it comes to, you know, my family and my new business, and I'm doing all that I can to create change. But realistically, it's going to take millions and millions of dollars in legislation.
Right.
That's the bottom line. But hopefully, once we see that the criminal cycle is so insane to me, you know, and it took me years to actually see a clear picture of actually what's taking place.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that if everybody knew what goes on in prison and how we're treated, not just, you know, inhumanely, but the things that we're taught. You know, we're taught everything's a black market. So
Right.
stealing runs rampant. We're taught that it's okay to steal. We're taught so many negative behaviors that you can't go out and get a job and work for somebody and steal from your employer. It doesn't
Right.
work like that. But that's what the state teaches. And so what I'm doing is I want to create an environment in prison that reflects actual society as close as possible as we can get. I'm not talking about making a country club,
Right.
but I'm talking about giving people responsibility, allowing them to make certain choices, and so that they either get rewarded or they suffer consequences of those choices.
Right.
And TDC does not do that.